Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us for this interview series from the Council of Women World Leaders. The Council started almost 30 years ago after I had gone around the world and met at the time, the 15 women who were president or prime minister. And now we think that it is time to relook at that with new women leaders. And we are very delighted that you were able to join us today for this series. We met in Stockholm, and the leaders agreed to a council. So the original founder of it was Mary Robinson and President Vigdis of Iceland, along with myself. So the council has been in existence quite a while, and I want to thank Sarah Vilde and Ilmir Abanova, who are members of the council staff, who set this interview series up, which the purpose of which is to follow up from my original set of interviews. Now we have a lot of women who have become leaders, presidents and prime ministers of their country. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to have these members reflect upon their experience as president or prime minister. And again, we want to thank you very much, Madam President, for being willing to do this. So I thought that the first question might be one that starts perhaps a little bit with your background. What values do you think you got from your family, from your parents, from growing up in Mauritius, that you actually embraced and took into your leadership position as president of the country? What were those values that you embraced?
Thank you so much for organizing this, and also I'm very happy to see in the bill in this program. I think we need more younger women leaders in part of this conversation. So thank you for organizing this. The question you asked is very, very important, Laura, in as much as very often we find that, and that's true, right? Right across, even when you're president or whatever profession you're trying to do, whatever barrier you're trying to break, I think it brings down to something very fundamental, which is confidence building. And confidence building has really been instilled in me, in my then very cheerleader, who was my father. And that's why I keep saying to all these young mothers and young people coming up, that's what you have to do, is keep on telling that girl child that they have to believe in themselves. They have to really believe in themselves, in their capacity. And having your father, your uncle, your grandfather telling you that every day, that you're capable of doing anything, that stays with you right till the very end. And now this is something I am actually going around and saying to my daughters, and I'm very happy that Nawshin is also part of the conversation as a young woman who's trying to push barriers. And so believe in yourself, get that confidence in you, and also keep believing in yourself, because, if you don't believe in yourself, no one will. So believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, analyze what your shortcomings are, if there are any, and keep pushing and never ever give up. So this is the various, in a nutshell, what the messaging would be in terms of really the empowerment of women.
Very good. And, that is a similar refrain that I have heard from many women presidents and prime ministers, which is that sense of building that confidence that you can do anything, often reflecting upon a father who's been a strong role model. And mothers obviously are very, very important too. But I think in societies where, gender equality has still not been achieved, which is virtually every society, that father role turns out to be very, very important. Because I would imagine in your career, I mean, you've been a acclaimed scientist, you've been president, you've received many honors globally. That there were some men who didn't necessarily think you should take the role, that you were entitled to that role, that you had the capabilities to handle that role. So how did you handle that? What was your strategy for overcoming that kind of negative impulse that people would sometimes put upon you?
Friendly enough, throughout my journey, there has never been any plan per se. There has been passion, and there has been this notion of enjoying what you do. And when that opportunity presents itself, you seize it. And that is something that has really underpinned my entire journey. But coming to the position of presidency, because before that, I had taken many risks to get to where I was, which ended me being an entrepreneur at the end of my career at the university as deputy vice chancellor. But when it came to the presidency, it was, I would say, a stroke of luck. It was taking the right decision at the time. And when my name was announced as presidency, I said to myself, why not? Again, basing myself on the confidence that had been instilled in me from a very young age by my father, and also at the much later down the line, I had the support of my family and my husband. So I said to myself, why not? Let's give it a try. I mean, when I looked at what they were pushing forward, I ticked all the boxes then. I did not take the boxes when I was doing my academic journey or maybe other journeys, but there I ticked the boxes. What were the boxes? The boxes were woman, a fresh face. They wanted a Muslim because Islam is the minority in my country. And they wanted somebody who was untouched by the political world. And when this was presented to me in that kind of package, I said to myself, why not? I just said, let's go for it. I took that risk. And again, this is something that many women are not very happy to do, is the notion of taking risk. It's not inbuilt in us, I think by virtue of nature, because we are the bearer of the next generation. We tend to be risk averse. It's not taught in business school. And we just have to say to ourselves, we can do it. I can do it. Why not try it? There may be backlash at the end of the day, but again, it's a gamble. So life itself is a gamble. So let's go for it and let's try it. And that's what I did. And I just put my hat in, and lo and behold, it paid off. So as I had nothing to lose because I was already outside in the safety net of academia and all that, I was out there as an entrepreneur. So as an entrepreneur, you still have to take risks. So I just went ahead and it paid off.
I like that very much. I think that I echo your observation that often women see things like power or risk as negatives, you know. But if you have a passion for what you're doing, which you expressed you did, and you wanted to see change, and you knew you had the capacity to do that,
Mhm.
you stepped in. I think that often women think of power because they've experienced being power over them. They think power is a negative word, you know. But it sounds like you have understood the value of power.
Absolutely. Power should not be negative. And also, in the era we're living in, narrative words matter. And women like myself would be very often described as being aggressive because we are in a position of power. But aggressivity is very often associated with women, but for men, it would be something else. It would be achievement, it would be character, it would be all be positive. But for women, it would be aggression and not kind of pushing in your career in whatever direction that society decides should be. And I think these words have to be looked at very carefully. Narrative matter. And if woman is perceived to be aggressive, we should say a woman is also ambitious and she's entitled to do that, to have that.
Yeah, I think that very much that sense that those words are often used differently. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that's the refrain of 30 years ago.
Yes.
That one hasn't changed. That one has not changed. What do you think about women's leadership and the progress around women's leadership? I mentioned, 30 years ago we had these 15. Now we continue to have more and more women, but there is some observation globally that, the women's rights, women's leadership, women's entitlement to lead is somewhat eroding in this global moment.
If we look at, well, it's a fact that globally, when you look at women in leadership position, be it as heads of government or heads of state, I think they are under 25% or around about that figure. Having said this, we should not be all negative because if we look at Beijing as being the benchmark, we found that there has been significant progress. There has been areas like education, there has been political representation. Gender discrimination, nonetheless, remains deeply embedded in many societies. Therefore, I think it hinders women's right and opportunities. And in my country, we have seen, for example, legal reform. We have seen a tendency to ban discrimination. Education is at parity. Both girls and boys can have the potential to be educated. There tend to be increased political representation, but even then, we find that there's still room for improvement. There is a gender responsive, for example, actions. We found that, for example, in terms of the climate action, we found that there is gender responsiveness. But whatever we do, there still are changes and challenges and setbacks because there's still persistent discrimination. And we found that this remains deeply ingrained in all societies and economies. So there is still uneven progress. There's still backlash against gender equality. There's still violence against women. Economic inequality is the issue that we have to tackle. And, we have all the laws, but what we find is limited implementation of the laws. So we can have all the beautiful laws that we have, but if it's not implemented correctly, we're still back to square one. And we find also that whenever there is political instability, whenever there's conflict, and we find that whenever there's violent conflict, women and girls, of course, are disproportionately affected, be it in terms of violence, in terms of sexual violence. So all these issues we have to keep on addressing post, of course, now we are at post Beijing plus 30. And we have the Beijing plus 30 action agenda. So we really have to accelerate progress in order to address this gender equality issue. And increasingly, we have to keep on holding governments accountable because at the end of the day, if we don't have the laws, if we don't implement the laws, I mean, who is going to be held accountable? It has to be the government. And but having said this, we need to keep on investing in women and in girls because when we invest in them, we find that they are more able to address these challenges themselves and make sure that they are able to stand and lead the fight because it is a fight at the end of the day. And also they keep on flying the flag high that we need more women at the helm. But another point I would like to raise as well, while women are battling on, we want to see more women solidarity. And this is where we are lacking among ourselves. We need to have that. Women solidarity, that when a woman is doing well, let's make sure that we ensure that she stays there because she becomes that role model. She becomes that beacon that will keep on shedding the light for the rest of us.
Oh, I think that's a very valid point. That notion of the solidarity, that notion of getting to a level of critical mass, for example, in the parliaments and in
Yes.
the decision making. You really can't make that kind of progress until you have that. I mean, of course, the challenge for women is that not all women think alike,
No.
and they aren't, there are some women who may or may not support the kinds of issues that you just described
Yes.
as important for gender development. Can I ask you to reflect a little bit because this may or may not be occurring in Mauritius, but it's certainly occurring globally and having a very chilling effect on women stepping into positions of political power or taking a second term, for example. And that's the digital violence, media harassment is just getting bigger and bigger. Now, it happens to men, yes, but according to the Interparliamentary Union, women politicians will get about 9 times more of that digital harassment and threats, et cetera. And that is having a demonstrable effect on women stepping into these roles. How do you think, one, do you see that too? What's the best way forward with that?
This is a very pernicious, a chronic problem because we are increasingly going to live in a digital age. We are living in the advent of AI. But I think where we have to be even more wary of the issue that you're mentioning is when we talk about regenerative AI, because this is going to be another layer that women have to grapple with. Um, it is so easy to demonize women. And what we have to demonize women, especially through deep fake photograph, which of course have been manipulated, doctored, and circulated. I think another area that we have to be able to look into as a society is, increase the digital literacy of women. And this is something that society has to be apprised. And we have seen so many women, like even in Mauritius, people are actually posting almost pornographic videos of women. And now just think, if these women are at the helm of institutions or corporations or even in the country, I mean, the devastation that this creates, especially when society is very, very conservative. I mean, I come from that society, and Nawshin can confirm that this is the case for Mauritius, even though we are perceived to be a highly liberal society. But at the level of the family, it is still very conservative. And so digital literacy, also, I think, again, enforcement of the law. Because there are laws. I mean, I know it is very difficult to actually legislate around the cyberspace, but there are laws in the country. We have a law in Mauritius called the Information Communication Technology Act. And this should be able, but again, is there the willpower to actually use and implement the law as it should, with the force that it should? Because up until we don't get these enforced, where people will actually, those who are the perpetrators are behind bars if needs be, we will not be doing much headway. So this is again a campaign that needs to be held, a sensitization campaign, so that the law, as it's still through all the force, be implemented. If we are to see women at a higher position, and also if you want to protect families, because at the end of the day, the impact it has on families, it cannot be ignored, and we really need to be addressing that.
That's right. I think that the impact on families, and I think women feel that, not that the men wouldn't feel it necessarily, but I think
Mm,
when women are getting these threats, or they're getting threats from against their family, it really makes them question whether they should stay in the public light. But
exactly.
as you have so well spoken said, this it's essential for women to be in the public sphere, making the public decisions. Um,
Absolutely.
you've had a long career. Do you have any sort of observations about how you see women, dealing with issues, speaking, interacting with constituents, um, positioning themselves professionally? How do you see them that differing from how men have a tendency to do that?
When we look at women generally, women's ascent to leadership, we found that they're confronted with what I call visible and also silent barriers. And when we would look at visible barriers, this include, of course, the infamous gender bias. We talk about lack of access to network. And increasingly, we find this issue of non-paid jobs, of course, family responsibilities, which I feel should be shared. But, we are where we are. These are, of course, attributed to the woman sole responsibility. When it comes to silent barriers, we find that women encompass unconscious bias, stereotypes about leadership style, and of course the infamous glass ceiling. So these are some of the issues that women unfortunately have to keep on, the encounter every day. But there is something that I would also like to add, Laura, is, women increasingly, they find themselves to have what is increasingly referred to as the imposter syndrome, right? And they have a double bind. They keep on doubting their abilities and qualification. And this can also hinder, again, their self-confidence and the willingness to pursue leadership roles. So if we are going to address stereotype about leadership style, we also have to address the structure around these issues. The structure and addressing stereotype will be two of the key points moving forward. And not forgetting that the glass ceiling, which is, of course, the invisible barrier preventing women from achieving to top leadership position, despite the qualification experience, matter still to this day. In fact, I jokingly once said, we don't have glass ceiling. And people were looking at me and they said, what do you mean? I said, we don't have glass ceiling. We only have a pile of men out there who are preventing us from moving forward and moving upward. And there is another thing as well, which I think must be addressed, is this tendency to have tokenism, right? Many organizations will appoint women to leadership position primarily just to appear diverse without genuinely valuing their contribution. And also, are they helping to create a supporting environment? So all these points to issues that women have to grapple with on a daily basis. And how do we help them along? How do we, there are good examples. I mean, if you look at family responsibilities, there are some Nordic countries like Sweden, for example, they have putting creche in the workplace and giving paternity leaves. And, these things, all they may be incremental, but I think they do help the women who are trying to push forward so that we don't find many women at middle management position where they get stuck because they can't move forward by virtue of the fact that the conditions is simply not ripe for them to do so.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. And the World Economic Forum's gender gap report would confirm that
Yeah.
that Nordic countries do rank much higher on the gender gap report, precisely because they have the kind of institutional supports that are necessary. They have the laws, as you indicate, and seemingly more implementation of these laws. And it's also interesting, and I don't know what your personal position is on this, but again, according to the Interparliamentary Union, over 100 countries currently have some sort of what I will call affirmative mechanism in place, i.e., some sort of quota system, whether it's a temporary system, it's a ceiling, a floor, whatever, and that has actually had the impact of increasing the percentage of women in politics, particularly, and also some countries in the business sector, corporate boards, etc. What do you feel do you feel that that's effective? What do you think is the best way to what I call hurry history?
You know, I, I keep answering that question by a very just as a statement that a bird cannot fly with one wing. If we want to actually draw to advance our economies, we need more Title IX, for example, as happened in the United States. We need more inclusion. And I think increasingly societies have to recognize that women do things differently. And we need to have this kind of the way we can actually symbiotically work together with men, because we bring a different angle to the problem if there is a problem. And we have seen that during the COVID, for example, when it came to communication. And we saw these women leaders out there who were communicating, who were more empathetic. And I remember, I think it was the Prime Minister of New Zealand who was operating out her kitchen and passing on the message. There is no actually exclusivity to this kind of thing. It can be done. We can still be women. We can still be wearing nice stuff. We can still be wearing color. We can still do all these things at the same time deliver when it comes to issues like foreign policy. We can still deal issue when it comes to financial sector. All these we have an opinion, but we do it differently. And up until the point that we don't have this kind of symbiosis, this complementarity. And one thing I have said also, we do not have gender equality. We have gender complementarity. And up until the point we recognize this, we will not be making headway, because we cannot win any match by leaving 52% of the talent on the wayside. And that's lost to anybody, to any society, to any country. And we can no longer afford to do this because we need all the talents on board to be able to move forward, to advance our economies, to actually make our family lives better. Because when a woman works, she invests more in the family. This is something which is not written, which is, of course, a fact. We need more women because they invest more in the health, they invest more in the education. I have been an example of this where my mother, even though she was not, she was a homemaker, but she was a very intelligent woman and she was always pushing. And whatever savings she had, she always put it back into the family. So getting these women empowered financially, getting them empowered through knowledge, through their rights, through what they can do, it's immense. And I think we have to keep on hammering this and bringing this to the table all the time.
Excellent, excellent. I think you summarized perfectly. Well, I think what we're all here trying to achieve. I remember Gro Brundtland, the Prime Minister of Norway, saying she couldn't make a wise decision unless she had the input of both men and women, and that's what you're saying. The
Yes,
problems in society are way too complex to leave a whole sector of society out of solving those problems.
absolutely. Absolutely.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. Now
Thank
it's
you.
my pleasure to turn this over to a young woman leader who knows you and admires, obviously, what you're doing. And she herself is on an excellent, extraordinary career track and very much in support of the all of the concepts that you've articulated. So, Nawshin Mahadooa, I'm going to turn it over to you for you to have a conversation with Madam President.
Thank you, Laura, and it's good to see you, Amina,
Thank you,
after
Nawshin.
so many years and to exchange with you today. I'm actually honored to be interviewing today. I'll just pick up on a few points that you exchanged with Laura regarding the role of your father when you were a child and then later in your career. So, what advice would you give to all the fathers today who are raising intelligent, brilliant women like yourself in Mauritius? And as you said, we do live in a very conservative society, although it's not represented. And in Africa, where we recently probably read about Mr. Ali Dangote promoting her three daughters to leadership positions within her group. So yourself, what advice would you give to those fathers who are raising daughters like yourself?
Fathers should increasingly be the cheerleaders, as I said, of their daughters, and they should keep saying to the daughters, there's nothing that they can't do. They have the intelligence, they have the support, and they have the prop, the family prop, and they should go out there and do it. And if they fail, don't worry. Make sure that the recovery is V-shaped. And so that's the only way forward because one thing that we tend to do in Mauritius and also in many parts of the world is we consider failure to be negative. Failure is not a negative. It's going back to the drawing board and starting again. And starting it with sound basis because you know where you have failed and you can rectify on this. So make sure your recovery is V-shaped, never give up, and make sure that your daughter is out there with the best support that the family can provide.
Thank you. You mentioned about women's solidarity when
Yeah.
women are there at the success point, and we need to have more solidarity amongst women, cheering up us and supporting us. So, what advice would you give to those young women who are on their way there on the leadership position?
I think the women, first of all, it's always good to know that there is somebody out there who has made it, and then you should say to yourself, there's nothing preventing me. That's exactly, I feel, the message that a little girl growing in my village would have, that I can grow up to be one day president. Why not? Because someone else before me has done it, and role model for a very long time has been Marie Curie, and you know the era that she lived in the early 1900s. And she's a two times Nobel Prize winner. And recently, there's another African woman, I think she's a sole African woman Nobel Prize winner, Wangari Maathai. And what she went through, and yet, whenever I go to Kenya, I look at the forest, the Karura forest, I said, wow, this has been saved through the effort of one woman. and she has been recognized for it. So that's why we need to have many more women at the helm so that they become that beacon to actually raise the hope of those women who are, those girls who are growing up there, and know that it is possible, it is doable, because someone else has been there before me.
Thank you. And I also know you as a botanist, as a lover of plants, and I have followed you, and I know your love for plants and how you have nurtured them. And then, you turn your love for plants into your career, and you probably joined politics. So there is something that has framed your journey through your passion. So today, is there a cause or issue you're particularly passionate about? Could you share how you're currently engaged in advancing it and why it matters to you personally?
I am, thanks for again mentioning my passion for plant and for biodiversity in general. I highlight this biodiversity because unfortunately people don't realize it. Biodiversity is the branch on which humanity is sitting. Unfortunately, we're cutting it down. And so you know what will happen when we start cutting the branch on which we are sitting. We all will collapse. And I am still very passionate. I still do a lot on the biodiversity and sustainable development, because unfortunately the perception is that humanity or mankind, which has appeared, if we are to consider our time frame of the life on this planet to be a 24-hour clock, we would have appeared a few seconds before midnight, and see the damage that we have done. Also, another point that I would like to bring to the table here is that humans are very much part of the ecosystem. We are not out of it. So if for as long as we consider ourselves to be outside the ecosystem, we will still be treating nature with a lot of condescension, and that's wrong. So keep on driving the message that we are very much part of biodiversity. Nature doesn't need us. We need to save our space on this planet and not the other way around. We're not saving the planet. We are saving our space on this planet. So do a lot for sustainable development. Speak also about the contribution of women in sustainable development issues. If you look at agriculture, for example, although agriculture is a net emitter, we can make it become a net absorber by empowering more women, because they are those who are there on the ground, actually doing something, feeding their family, ensuring that the crops are well looked after, well tended. So women empowerment, women issues, sustainable development, pushing that girl into science, take that girl by the hand and make sure that she gets a good education and she gets a good grounding of science, because that's how I came to where I am, by virtue of very motivated teachers who actually gave me precisely these tools for me to actually rise. But also, more importantly, make them dream, because your dreams have to be very big. Because if they're not very big, if they don't scare you, they're not worth it. So dream big, but at the same time have a strategy, because dream is not a strategy. Getting the objectives right there to be able to move beyond your dreams, that's very important.
Thank you, Her Excellency. This is certainly going to change the way I dream today. And it's been nice exchanging with you. Thank you, Laura, and the team.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Nawshin, for those excellent questions to Her Excellency. You brought out another facet of her life and her leadership, which we all appreciate. Madam President, we cannot thank you enough for participating in this interview series. You are a great role model for women around the world. And your words, we hope, will be dispersed to many people globally who will understand what you have come to, the power of being able to improve, the power to be able to change, the power to be able to speak your mind and have your destiny. So thank you very much. We wish you the best of success and look forward to your continued participation with the Council of Women World Leaders.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much, Nawshin, for being part of the game. Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All the best
Thank
to
you.
both of you. Thank you now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.